Well, I want to welcome Molly to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so this is part of the series where we do a member spotlight. So Molly's part of the AT parenting community and also an author. We're going to get into that too because she's got a dual role here. But I'm wondering if we can start off with just maybe a little bit of your story and your daughter's story.
Sure. So my daughter is almost 12 now, and when she was 6, almost 7, she was diagnosed with OCD. We were experiencing things for about a year and didn't really realize it till about the 7-year mark. And so we've been on the journey for a while, almost 5 or 6 years. And at that time, we were very lucky to find a great therapist. We live in South Carolina, and she got us off on the right foot, learning ERP and doing exposures. And so
I was lucky.
Very lucky, yes. And we made really good progress from probably 7 to 9 or 10 years old, and then the tweens have hit us, and we are having a couple challenges, but we're working through them. So.
Okay. So I thought maybe we can kind of go through some of the struggles that she's having and some of the tools that you're using to show parents. And I think it's a good message, even just from the get-go, to say that OCD is kind of this long-term journey. Now, I always tell parents, I'm like, it's not a cold. You're not here for the cure. It's not like your child got sick, got a cold, then we cure it and you're good. It's a lifestyle. It's like learning, how do I cope with this? Just like a diabetic learns how to maintain their sugar levels. And sometimes when they grow bigger or hormones take place, there's a spike, and then you have to shift and readapt. And so it sounds like you're kind of in that stage.
Yes. Yeah. I'll talk about that in a minute, because we are kind of trying to teach her how she takes her own ownership of her OCD, because she's going to need the skills for her lifetime. But I'll touch on the first thing of what we're working on first. We've been having issues with moral OCD, and when I joined your community, I think it was in January, because we were 3-4 years into our journey. We had a lot of information, and what I like about the community is we dig even deeper. So we've dug deeper into the different forms of OCD, and one of them was your mini moral OCD course. And at the beginning, when she was young, I didn't realize it was moral OCD, but we had a lot of apologizing, a lot of telling on herself, 50 to 100 times a day, over and over.
Yeah.
So we got that under control, and then there's always been a little confessing through the years. And then just within the last couple months, she's in middle school, and so she's been hanging out with her friends, and she has realized that she will answer one of their questions. It can be something as simple as, hey, what's your favorite movie? And she'll say a movie, and then her OCD immediately says, are you sure? Are you sure that's the right movie? Are you telling them the truth? You better make sure. So she's questioning herself. Sometimes she says she feels like it's lying, or if she's, being a good person and telling the right thing. And her compulsion is to immediately say, I take that back. And then she switches it to something else.
Yeah.
And so she brought that to my attention, as well as she feels like she has to be overly kind with her manners. So with a teacher, or maybe a waitress at a restaurant, or, a cashier at a grocery store or something, she feels like she has to be overly kind. And then also they have to be looking her in the eye. And if they're not looking her in the eye, then she doesn't feel like she's been a good person and kind enough. So in the past, I would have never known that was OCD or part of moral OCD. And because of your mini course and the things I've learned in it, and some of the things you've talked about as well, I immediately realized what it was. And I just happened to, a couple months ago, share some of those things with her, because I thought, we've definitely seen moral OCD in her, and I want her to be aware a little bit. I didn't share all of the ugly stuff about moral OCD, but the things I could, and she picked up on it right away. So we've been working on it the last couple weeks, and it's getting better. We still have some work to do, but she did realize that that's what she was doing. So
yeah, I think a lot of people who have kids with moral OCD think that their kids are just super over polite and indecisive.
Right.
They're just so honest, and they're so, and even some parents I work with who know that it's moral OCD, because either they're educated about it or I tell them, they'll say, well, Natasha, is it really that bad of a deal? Because, my child's not going to drink or smoke or do anything bad, and they want to be super honest. And it's sometimes it's a hard sell to tell people this is just as bad as washing your hands over and over. It seems polite and it seems like they're going to make good choices, but the torment that goes with it for those kids or adults who have it, it's not fair.
It's not fair. Yeah.
It's totally an OCD theme, even though it brings some good behavior.
Right. I know. I've had so many teachers. I work at the school in the office sometimes, and I've had so many come up to me and say, "Your daughter is so nice and so kind." And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not fully her choice. She's being so kind and so nice. So
yeah.
It's goods and bads, right?
Yeah, it's the struggle. So what are some approaches you guys are doing right now?
Well, for instance, with her teachers, since she's in middle school, she switches every hour. So she has 6 or 7 teachers throughout the day. And at the end of the period, she has to go up to them. She feels like she has to go up to them and say, "Thank you, have a nice day." And like I said, if they're not looking her in the eye, then she feels like she hasn't done it correctly. She's not repeating it, but she thinks about it for the next couple hours. So we've talked about how just to mix it up, one day we said, okay, you only can say thank you. You can't say thank you, have a nice day. Another day we've said, all right, you need to look the other direction and say it instead of looking them in the eye.
I love it.
And I did get her one day to just totally skip to say it. It was super hard. And she did say that she didn't do it that hour, but 3 hours later when she saw that teacher, she had to say it. But she did initially do it. Yeah, she did initially do it. So we're working on, for that part of it, we're working on those type of things.
Yeah, those are good stuff. Because I would think, even like contacting the teacher, if you had a good one, to make sure that they don't look her in the eye on purpose without her even knowing.
That's a good idea.
Would be a good exposure.
Yeah.
But you also bring up a good point that I want to bring up or highlight is a lot of times I think people feel like I just need to stay in my lane. So if my child just has symmetry OCD or just right OCD, I'm just like, I just need to know about that. Like, I can't tell you how many emails I get from parents who will say, with your OCD course, my bigger OCD course, they'll just say, do you talk about moral OCD? Because I just want to know about that. Or do you talk about like just germs? Because I just want to know about that. And I feel like I'm on my soapbox and I'm like, no, you need to know about all of them. Because you want to be proactive. You want to be able to spot a weed versus a flower. And you're a good example of that, where like you knew about it from the community. You knew about like moral OCD, how it presents. And so when that little sprout came up and started to germinate, you could recognize it in that field and pull it really quickly or start working on it.
Yes. Yeah, we have definitely we've hit so many different OCD themes. It's so good to know all of them. And I feel like when we go deeper into them, like you have done now for the future, just like it happened in this case, it's going to help her and I in the future detect it, faster. So
yeah, this kind of goes into the other point that I think we wanted to talk about is you really want to train your child to become their own expert and how to motivate them. And 12 is such a hard age.
Super.
Yeah, 12 and on. I have a 16-year-old too, and I'm just like, that's rough too. So
yeah,
it's a little bumpy once they hit the hormones, and
it is.
They don't want to listen to you, and they don't want you to work on their problems, and they don't want you to tell them what to do. And so when they're younger, it's a little bit easier to work on sometimes their OCD. But then when they get to be older, like your daughter, how do you work with that?
Well, just to reiterate what you said, that's right. When she was 7 to 10, I was in the captain's seat. I could, when she came to me with an OCD issue, I could, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it this many times a day. Or I would write things down and say, give me your numbers, tell me your SED numbers. I was in total control. Yeah. And then about a year ago, she got upset and said, all you do is try to fix me. You're not listening. You're just trying to fix me. And so between her and the information you were providing, I realized I was not letting her be the captain of her journey. I was, taking over. So in the last 7 months or so, we've really tried hard for me to step back and for her to, take ownership of it. It has been challenging on both parts. She's not as motivated as I would want her to be motivated, and I can't tell her certain things, but just in the last month or so, we've seen her start to get motivated and start to choose her own challenges and start to take ownership. We still have a lot of work to do, but it's headed in that direction, which is nice.
Yeah, that is nice. And at least where you have to head. Like that this is ultimately the goal versus just kind of pushing back and out of fear. I think a lot of times it's driven by fear with parents. Like,
Sure.
you can't grow these neural pathways. Like, you can't do this to your brain. And so if you're not going to do it, I'm going to force it on you. And it is hard to sit there and watch your child do compulsions or feed their OCD and know that you can't really have a part in that. All you can do is motivate and encourage.
Yes.
You can control your part as far as not feeding it, but by the time they're 12, most often, well, I don't say most often, but often, you're not part of the compulsion. Like, they find other ways to, more adult ways to satisfy their OCD needs, versus the 6 or 7-year-old who has to confess to you. Once you're very well skilled at not feeding the OCD is smart. It's like, I'm not getting fed over there, so I need to find a different source of food.
Right.
It moves away.
Yeah.
So how are you trying to get her to do her own thing?
Well, we've done a few things. I constantly was asking her about it, whether it was every day or every other day. And I've stepped back and only trying to talk to her about it once a week, or sometimes we can stretch it to once every 2 weeks if we're not in a rough patch. But she has to bring it up to me, and I'll say to her, you want me to be a listener or a fixer right now? And she often says a listener. And so I listen.
I love that.
Keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And then, you know what, sometimes she'll say, okay, I need you to be a fixer. What can you help me with? Or, we start having her try to figure out, okay, what challenges could you do for yourself? Give me 4 or 5 that you could do. Whether she does them or not, it's up to her, but she's at least thinking of the challenges versus myself just telling her what she should do. And she's starting to write. She's got a little journal where she's starting to write down what her OCD is bothering her about and writing the numbers. So really just handing over what I was doing and starting for her to learn how to do it as well.
Which is so invaluable, because really, like, whenever I even see families and a child, like, I'll always say, I'm coaching you guys, the parents, to help support your child, but your child, I'm coaching you. And I normally point at the kid and I'll say, I'm teaching you how to be your own OCD therapist, because you're going to live with this forever. We're just part of your journey. We're just here to be like, woohoo, let's hope, we're here to support you.
Support.
But,
yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's going to be their deal. So I think it's great that you're teaching her, to kind of structure her own exposures or decide when she wants to do them. It's still great for us to help, but for them to know that, like, the ownership falls on them is invaluable. And I think that's a hard thing to stomach sometimes as a parent. I think,
Very, yeah.
To let them control the pace, but so important as well.
Super important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I get it. I know. Even my 16-year-old, I can't even talk to her about it anymore. She doesn't have OCD. She has social anxiety, but we went on a trip this past weekend and I was like, I don't know. We went to a water park and she just could not handle the water park. She was like, the water is disgusting and people are walking around barefoot. And I'm like, you might have some subclinical OCD. She's like, I don't, Mom. I'm like, I diagnose people. We got into an argument about it. Then she did an exposure, because then I was like, well, if it's not bothering you, if it's not OCD, let's go walk in that puddle over there, the one that looks really gross. And so, I think you have to kind of approach them sideways.
Yes.
They're not gonna always take it. So the other thing I want to talk about today is that you wrote a phenomenal book through all of this.
We did.
So you wrote Practicing Being Brave. I'll show it to those that are on YouTube. I love this book. This is actually my first go-to. So can you talk about what made you write this and the process?
Sure. So when she was 6 and she got diagnosed, the first couple years, we felt pretty alone. We didn't have a lot of information, and we wanted something for her personally that would communicate to her at her level. We had stacks of adult OCD books and parenting OCD books. We did have a few of the OCD children's stories, but we just felt like she needed more. The more we could get in our hands, the more we could normalize it, the better. And as I mentioned, that time we had a really good therapist and we were learning a lot. And over time, we ran into your podcasts and we became more engaged with IOCDF, and we watched the Unstuck movie. And so we were, learning all kinds of things. And at that point, which was probably, almost 4 years into it, we felt we knew enough to share our story. And when our daughter would hear another kid had OCD, she felt such relief and connected. we told her about adults too, but it was really when there was another kid that she felt connected. And we felt it was really important to reach out to those other kids, just to share the story and let them feel connected, give them hope, possible guidance. Of course, we're no professionals, we're just parents, but if
I don't know, that goes a long way.
Well, we know there's a lot of kids out there that can't get to therapy or don't have it. And so if we could just at least start them in the right direction and explain it to them, we thought it would be, make our hearts feel good to help other people just by sharing our story. So we wanted it engaging and colorful, but more importantly, informational with a positive message, to give them hope. And so that was kind of the start of where we did it.
Yeah, and it does all of that. I think it really is a good introduction to OCD and to normalize it, because the first step when you're working with a child is to normalize it.
Sure.
And nothing is more normalizing than handing them a book that is their story. And they're kind of like, wait a minute. And I've had kids say to me, wait a minute, there's a book about this? Or, sometimes I'll loan books out and they'll bring it back and they'll say, I can't believe this. This is like totally my story. Like, this is what I do. I can't believe other people struggle with this. When I tell them that in therapy, they just think I'm trying to make them feel better. Or they'll even say, did my mom tell you to tell me that? They were just really suspicious. Even with my YouTube videos, sometimes that helps to normalize it. But I'll have kids who will come into my practice who've watched them first and they'll say, did you make that YouTube video because my mom emailed you? Like, there's just so much suspicion. But a book, for some reason, has even more validity.
There's something about putting a book in a kid's hands that just, like you said, there's validity there.
Yeah, it's printed. Somebody published it,
Yeah.
Did you write it, or did you and your daughter write it, or your family?
It was kind of a combo. I wrote it and my husband helped some, and then I showed it to my daughter and asked if she wanted to add anything or if we needed to change anything, and she had a few tips, but really it was my husband and I that really wrote it. It of course was all based on her story, but it was the two of us. So
yeah, and the illustrations are really cute.
Aren't they cute? That was Ross Webb. She lives in Ireland, and I found her as a freelancer on the computer. And
did you really? What a
yes.
find!
I know, she was great.
Like, these are just really cute illustrations.
She did them all in watercolors, which is interesting.
Did she really? Which I think is. I'm going to just show a couple more pictures.
Sure.
Yeah, these are, because a lot of times books are good, but then the illustrations kind of fall flat, and I feel like they're not as engaged. And kids are visual learners, so
sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the art in this book as well. So
that's what we were hoping for.
Yeah, it's cute.
Along with everything else, but we wanted the pictures, to capture the kids' attention too.
Yeah, because they're learning through the words and through the images. So it's been really invaluable tool in my office, and I think it's going to really help a lot of parents and kids. So I will leave a link below to get it. I'm sure it's on.
Sure. It's on Amazon, and we also have a webpage, practicebeingrave.com. Either one of those you can get them on.
I didn't even know that. All right, so practicebeingrave.com. I'll leave a link for that as well. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Our family is so grateful for your support and guidance and resources and help. And I know the whole community really appreciates you sharing your story. It's brave of you to share your story and your family's stories, and it really makes a connection with all of us, and you make a difference. So you should be proud of your work.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm a mum of a daughter with OCD. I live in South Africa, and it's a country that doesn't have a lot of resources for children's mental health, and specifically OCD. I really was at my wit's end on how I'm going to support my child, how I'm going to do ERP, how I'm just basically going to parent a daughter with OCD in a country that has little to no resources.
And at times it got just debilitating for us as a family, and I was super lonely. People weren't listening. I didn't have any support.
The AT community has been an absolute lifesaver. Natasha has been instrumental in the past few months in helping us set up ERP challenges, going through them step by step, being supportive each and every step of the way.
Joining the AT parenting community has been one of the best things I could have done for me and my family.
Natasha has built this community and it is exceptional.
I've learned so much. The support is fantastic. It's just been life-changing for my daughter.
It's so nice to be able to ask her live questions in office hours. She's there, she responds. Her live videos every week where she asks us what we need her to talk about. Also her forums, again, where you can ask questions. She's on there all the time. She is very present. The resources she has provided, the worksheets, there are so many things in this AT parenting community that are beneficial.
Natasha gives you so much of her time and her expertise. She's there to answer your questions, so it's such a personal way of getting help and support when it's much needed.
Personally, the community has helped me because I feel like I needed my support.
And then you have the added bonus of this fantastic community of parents who are going through such similar things, and suddenly you're empowered and have ways of accessing help and making a real difference to your family.
And also just the support of all the other moms and dads. It's really good. You know, we laugh together, we cry together, we fail together, we succeed together, and everybody gets it. Everybody gets it, and it's such a nice community to be with, and I hope you join us. You won't be disappointed. Try it out.